This is Wandering Universe. In part 2 of this video, I'll be exploring the Australian ancient gold rush during the Egyptian and Eastern European empires. So, let's go exploring. If you had a moment to watch some of my videos on Australia, I've brought up some enticing and not so crash hot things that this land has to offer to the world. As you all well know, most of the population is settled nicely along the, as you can see right here, eastern, southern and western coast of Australia. Why? Well, why else? Ah yes, the all-famous $1 million water view with the added bonus of jacking up the price of this property out of nothing. How can you not resist? But Australia is more than just reptiles, insects, bushland, outback, iconic features, cute marsupials, beaches, heat, Vegemite, Kath and Kim, and Tim Tams. Ugh. Don't get me started on Vegemite. I hate the stuff. Trust me, it's not for the faint-hearted. The taste is very salty and slimy, so don't get hooked on it anytime soon. Instead, pop these darlings onto your taste buds. Indeed. This 85% red barren desert overheated island does share a wonderful and colourful past that goes hand in hand with the good, the bad and the ugly. If you had a chance to watch part 1 of my video, I introduced a theory with some supportive evidence that may justify this claim that the ancient Egyptian and Phoenician seafarers arrived at Down Under. They had one objective request from the king: go in search of this gold. This titanic quest wasn't fulfilled out of charity. No, there was a huge incentive for their trying efforts. There was only one thing they had to do to get it. Get their hands dirty and mine the stuff right here. Their mining exploration didn't stretch very far inland, only along the sea coast region. They would have, at the time, got some friendly assistance from some local Aboriginal tribes, such as this mob right here from Port Macquarie. They didn't care for the stuff. To them, it was just a rock. No biggie. But to the Phoenicians and Egyptians, it was like a miracle from God. Say, for argument's sake, that they actually did mine this stuff along the east coast a long time ago, way before our recent gold rush frenzy. If it is so, those cave mines from ancient past would have been excavated on a small-scale operation, just to extract enough gold to load their cargo onto their ships and sailed back to their homeland. Their king would have been proud with this new lustrous find. But, hold on a minute. If that's as far as they went, what about WA, meaning Western Australia? Why didn't they arrive along the west coast? It's possible that this coast has a very, very long, steep cliff face accompanied by very rough high seas that would have endangered their ships. So, they sailed over to the east coast. It is well documented that WA is the mother state of not 1, not 2, but 37 gold mines scattered across the state. It is the gold mine bonanza. But I'll get into the topic in a later video. Rather than taking you on a whirlwind adventure to the places down under, I'll be exploring a myth. Yes, not just any old wives' tale from some crackpot, but an eccentric one that mentions one word. Ophir. No, not Oprah, the talk show host. I'm referring to a place called Ophir. So, what is the big deal behind this mysterious word? Nothing. It's just a word. But according to the Old Testament, lay within the ink-filled pages is a word called Ophir. So, what does this word mean to you? One word. Gold! Yes, gold. The Old Testament developed a morbid romantic obsession with this odd-looking name, Ophir. But, in typical Machiavellian fashion, nothing further came of it. No location, no map, no coordinates, no artifacts, nothing. Is this weird looking name a hoax? Fake news, perhaps? Well, let's find out. In my video on pyramids in Australia, there is a story that goes something like this: that Solomon, whilst doing a collaborating deal with Phoenician king Himran of Tyre, which is today's Lebanon, dispatched expeditions of the Phoenician mariners in search of gold in the land supposedly called Ophir. Okay, it's becoming somewhat a brain teaser, but this will fire up your curious brain cells and put this word under the microscope. As a matter of fact, I did some much research into this fairy tale name, and as it turns out, Ophir does exist on this map right here. Now, if you follow my arrow, where I'm about to point to an area that indicates down under. Okay, map A. Follow my arrow right here, as you can see. Okay, now here there's a head. Here there's a circle, and right here there's a boomerang. What does that tell you? To me, that tells me, and it would tell you, that it is Australia, or in bogan terms, Australia. So that would represent the Aboriginal man and his boomerang, and that circle represents the island. Now here's another map that depicts down under. This compelling world map, drawn by Herodotus in 450 BC, at the bottom it mentions a name, Mare Australis. Can you see? It's right here where my arrow is circling round this name. There it is, smack bang, right in front of you. Was this talked about amongst gossip circles in Greece and Egypt, that those rough-mannered seafarers knew of down under? In their minds, would they have thought it didn't exist? Duh, of course. I live here. Okay, so that takes care of one problem. Now, here is the other problem. What about the existence of a huge elaborate mine during King Solomon's reign? Would this photo indicate that he might have been a gold mine billionaire who invested in these types of mines that were a fair distance from his golden palace? If it were true, his net worth would be a cool $60 trillion in today's currency. In fact, he was so filthy rich, his palace was covered entirely in gold, like literally. If he didn't have a team of builders, architects, interior designers, property developers, investors, engineers, the construction team, etc., then the Old Testament failed to identify those persons. The question is, how on earth do you afford to build his wealth portfolio? Well, not just gold, but mostly the ivory trade. The interior of the palace was covered with this high-in-demand item. Back then, he made his wealth based on this gruesome trade which flourished in Africa, Middle East, and Rome. It got me thinking, how many elephants were killed to create his over-the-top red velvet throne? As always, the Old Testament failed to provide further information on the exact whereabouts of this mine. So, that solves another problem. Now, we need to explore outside the box and examine further clues on the whereabouts of Ophir. Gold mining started around 7,000 years ago, not in Egypt, not in India, not in Africa, but in Eastern Europe. It began in the Sakdrisi site in southern Georgia between 3rd or 4th millennium BC. Gold mining also occurred in Kolar district of Karnataka state around 2nd and 3rd century AD on a small scale like small pits. It would have kick-started the gold rush in Africa with such mines like Ancient Nubia, Gita in Tanzania, Kibali in Congo, Tasiat in Mauritania, Zimbabwe, and smack bang in the middle of Johannesburg in South Africa. Yes, This ancient gold rush occurred during the ancient Egyptian, Roman and Persian empires for centuries. They were madly awestruck for this stuff, and it was a first come, first served basis. Back then, was it a large-scale operation? I'll give you an example. This is what an ancient Roman gold mine looked like. Dirty, claustrophobic, and dim-lit. Many miners risked their lives fossicking this valuable metal for very little gain. Some died upon discovery, like a sudden mine collapse. Once they were trapped inside, there was no way out, and forget search and rescue services, they were left to rot. Back to King Solomon's mine. If it did exist, these mines would have been backfilled with boulders and dirt, keeping it permanently sealed off, to ward off any potential gold robbers looting the joint. By then, depending on the quality of the gold found, would have been melted down and transformed into shields, cups, plates and other fashionable items, as you can see right in front of you, during his reign. Today, it's all in gold bullion, ingots, coins and flakes. There were also ancient gold mines in Nubia. During ancient Egypt, it was deemed as the largest ever gold rush during the earliest dynasties. Yet, their methods of breaking down gold from the hard rock was very primitive and time-consuming. They crushed the ore and ground it to a fine powder before washing the powder, separating the silt from the gold dust. Okay, it's a start, but it gets more interesting as I dig deeper. Ophir is a place that you can mine for gold and silver and copper. They utilised this metal to barter their way to enormous wealth that gave permission to purchase high-living exotic items like ivory, apes, peacocks, yes, we do have peacocks in Australia, and pearls. Where exactly, if you might ask? In the northern region of Darwin on the NT. It's been known as the pearl diving area for decades by a pearl company called Paspali. It sounds to me that Ophir comes in several different interpretations, like the Arabian Peninsula, East Africa like Tunisia, Ethiopia, Libya and India as proposed sites. Once again, the bloody Bible never makes it absolutely clear about the whereabouts of this fancy gold mine. It's a frustrating mission for some. For many, it has become an arduous pursuit on tracking down this mine somewhere in this world. Ophir could suggest, you guessed it, Australia, such as New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, Western Australia and Queensland. But here's a hint. Could the Gosford glyphs that depicts the story of the Egyptian seafarer's fun sea adventure was out for one thing, in search of gold to take back to Egypt to do what? And what to process the gold for? Stay tuned. According to Rex Gilroy, who discovered and examined the Gympie Pyramid site in 1976, said Phoenician inscriptions are found all over this country. Bet Green's grandfather, John Green, a surveyor during the late 1800s, talked about findings at Gympie Pyramid and made drawings like this one to illustrate what he had witnessed. And this one. Back to King Solomon. The story goes that King Solomon mined gold in a very faraway place. The reason was the king himself was in desperate need to create death masks like this one for his funerary afterlife, including other kings after him. Fortunately, they found a place that contained a shit ton of gold. Let's try India. India makes a good candidate, as they spun the name to Sophar in their language. Next up, Israel. But there is one small problem. It's an ancient copper mine. So, scratch that off the list. But I will say this. In 1946, a dig was conducted in Ostrasa Tel Quassel in modern-day Tel Aviv. A pottery shard that said in Paleo-Hebrew script, gold of Ophir 2 for Beth Horon. It's mainly a receipt for the purchase of gold that was delivered personally in a pottery jar to his door. They concluded that the gold was imported to Israel. But from where? I can tell you this delivery of gold had no business connection with King Solomon himself. There is no solid, hard evidence written in stone, papyrus, on a rock wall, anywhere that proves the existence of Ophir. There is much conjectural over the story of King Hiram of Tyre, who collaborated to deal with Solomon. So, this leaves us with this question. Where did this incredible gold mine called Ophir come from? It's not over yet. There is more. Much more than you can poke a stick at. Yes, there is part 3 of this expedition, and the answer will leave you gobsmacked. That's all for now.